Hey guys, it's Matt here, and within the anticipation of finally getting a new modern day Battlefield game, I decided to revisit some of the games in the franchise that I grew up with. I made a video of Bad Company 2, then Battlefield 3, and then I realized that this series is working up to one of the biggest anticlimaxes in YouTube history, since I was stupid enough to think that a Battlefield game would launch even remotely playable. I give up. This is broken. It just doesn't work. I'm done. That's why in today's video I'm going back to hands down my favorite game in the franchise. The game that is everything I asked for in a Battlefield game, that was always fun and is absolutely flawless and always has been. Just kidding, I keep forgetting that when you buy a full price AAA game these days, you need to act like the developers are like your 5-year-old brother who just broke your Xbox controller. One of them is a spoiled little asshole that breaks things and gets away with it, and the other is your 5-year-old brother. Well, it's your own fault you bought a broken game, you just shouldn't buy it, meh. Yeah, and if all the supermarkets start exclusively selling shit, you should just stop eating. I'm sorry, I got a little carried away there. Enough about what if hovercrafts became sentient, the video game. Let's talk about the game that made me neglect my friends and lose my job before a global pandemic made doing that popular, in this sort of review on Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 released on the 29th of October 2013 and became actually playable around 2 years later. It consisted of a single player campaign and an online multiplayer. The co-op mode we saw in Battlefield 3 was gone, but who cares? I get greeted with a welcome surprise that the web browser version of Battlelog is gone and changed for an in-game menu, which is good. Thank you, DICE. Let's start off with the campaign. I'm pretty sure that I'm the only person at this point that is still playing these older Battlefield campaigns, let alone that I'm actually enjoying them. 6 hours of the developers flexing their latest achievements in video game graphics on me, while following a story that could have been written by simply throwing a dildo against a wall filled with plot points. It's not good, but it'll do. The story starts with a little swimming lesson inside a car, and I might as well put the volume on 100 right now and make a video on me trying to sing Total Eclipse of the Heart. Turn around! But at some point I might actually get to monetize my videos, so I won't do that. And if you guys keep liking the videos and subscribing to my channel, I actually still feel like making these videos has a purpose. Yes, that was a subtle hint, and yes, I do like to thank you if you already subscribed. Anyway, the story follows playable character Wrecker together with his squad, consisting of Pack, Irish and their squad leader Dunn. But you just saw him die in the car underwater, so maybe don't get too attached to him. Here's a tip for you, DICE. If you want me to care about a certain character, maybe not kill him after 5 seconds of screen time. You all die! You guys were retrieving something in Baku, but of course things go south and before you know it, it's already time for another round of who will the Americans wrongfully convict of war crimes this time? We've seen the Russians, then the Russians again, we've heard about the Middle East, but this time it will be yet again the Russians. But also this time they are working together with one of their close communist friends. They go way back. They've had their differences, but in the end they will always be collectively seen as the bad guy in FPS games that is no match for the hugely outnumbered US Army. It is China. You see, in this game you're part of a specialist group of soldiers that work from a huge aircraft carrier called the USS Valkyrie. There they get told that the mission they just did was basically a waste of time because the information they had to retrieve was already known by the US government. Done, even though I only knew you for about 5 seconds and you died in a setting which could have also described a middle school date night. You know, in a car, kind of sweaty and nervous, feeling like dying as you hear a soggy love song play on the radio. But you pretty much died for nothing, and that is yet again a dick move by this fictional in-game US government. You also get acquainted with main antagonist General Chang, who tried to set up a coup by assassinating his political rival, of who I will now try to pronounce his name. Jinjae. Something like that. Oh, and you never actually get to see Chang's face in this game because General Chang's chicken. Some quality writing in this video, it's unbelievable. You fast forward to a mission in Shanghai, where you have to infiltrate a highly guarded building. And by highly guarded, I mean you can do whatever the fuck you want and just go in through the unguarded side door. And while you discuss the highly political subjects of threesomes and fortune cookies...
Oh, come on, like, you open up a fortune cookie and it says, tomorrow you will be reborn in bed.
Dude, I had a threesome in bed.
You've had a threesome?
You make your way through the building. Oh yeah, your captain told you to stay silent at all times while infiltrating this building. But yeah, that sure as shit isn't going to happen in a modern AAA FPS.
Close the fucking door!
Hey, watch out! Hey, Wrong floor!
Eventually, you'll find 3 VIPs. CIA agent Kovic, or as I like to call him, somebody who probably yells at disabled toddlers to run faster. He's an asshole, I hate him. Together with Hannah and her husband. Dunn's dying wish was for you to become squad leader, which is okay, especially according to Irish, but also not at all because it becomes incredibly obvious that Irish has a hard time listening to his superiors. They manage to extract the VIPs, get out of the building, outrun a tank, destroy a few other tanks, and as soon as they board a civilian ship, an EMP goes off and Irish yet again takes matters into his own hands. Wrecker, being squad leader and all, should say something at this point, but since he's an unvoiced protagonist, he pretty much just stands there. Good thing though that the USS Valkyrie has more than enough space and resources for 400 Chinese refugees. Except, nope. So the Valkyrie decides to meet up with its sister ship, the USS Titan. Turns out General Chang was just a bit faster. You and your squad board the ship to retrieve intel, but instead you listen to Irish complaining. You listen to Kovic being an asshole.
We're going down into that.
You could swim, right, Marine? Right?
Abandon some guys that could have really used your help.
No! Please! Tell my mom! Tell my mom help! I can't die like this! I can't die like this!
And eventually you'll witness the Titan getting 2 letters added to its name. Going back to the Valkyrie, the Chinese now also boarded this ship, which sounds like it's bad news, but at least they kill Kovic, so thank you for that, China. Hannah turns out to be a total badass, but she's Chinese, so Irish doesn't trust her, making sure that you know that Irish is not only terrible at following orders, but also kind of a racist. You take a trip to Singapore, but it doesn't look nearly as good as promised in the brochure. It pisses off Hannah, who really was looking forward to a vacation with 3 men other than her husband, so she decides to betray you. Pac dies, which is unfortunate, he's kind of the only nice person in this game. You wake up in a prison together with this Russian guy, and if you haven't played Battlefield 3, you have no clue who this is. If you have played it, you probably also have no clue, because this guy looks nothing like Dima from that game. But apparently taking a nuclear blast to the face isn't a very good skincare routine. You find Irish, you break out of the prison, find Hannah, who did a double whammy crisscross. I actually was on your side the whole time and my husband is Jin Jae and not actually my husband. And right when it looks like you might break out, your cable car gets shot down and Dima dies off screen. Wrecker, Irish and Hannah continue on foot, shoot some people, have a meet and greet with a cast of Battlefield friends.
Hey, you have a cigarette?
Yes, I do.
Can I have one?
No, go buy your own.
Destroy a dam, and eventually get picked up by a C-130 in order to go back to the Valkyrie. Upon arrival, you see that Pac actually survived, only to be unceremoniously killed off again in a short movie 8 years later. They come head to head with General Chang's ship, and apparently these ships can be destroyed with a simple C4 explosive, but only if you actually manage to make the damn thing detonate. At this point you can do 3 things. If you don't do anything, the Valkyrie gets destroyed. If you let Hannah do it, she dies and you get a P90 to use in the multiplayer. And if you let Irish do it, he dies and you get his M240 for in the multiplayer. However, after a meager 5.5 to 6 hours, this is the end of the campaign, so it's over before you know it. And in the post-credit scene you hear something about all of them maybe actually surviving. So whatever you chose, it doesn't matter, and then you realize Irish actually died in real life about 4 months ago. And everything is just terrible. The end.
Oh my god. Valkyrie's gone. We blew it.
Although this campaign is a step up from the one we saw in Battlefield 3, it is so short and rushed that it doesn't really get its message across. On the one hand, it tries to make these characters grounded. They include conversations about having families back home, talking to Dunn's wife about him being killed, showing a lot of civilians and children who are affected by these conflicts, but within 6 hours you will never really feel attached to any of it. It's the video game equivalent of trying to describe Saving Private Ryan by saying, yeah, a lot of people die, it's really sad. On top of that, these grounded moments are still followed up by huge over-the-top set pieces which look insanely gorgeous, but doesn't make this a grounded story about the consequences of war. You simply go from vulnerable soldier that has to make difficult grey area decisions to
I sawed this boat in half!
Gameplay-wise, the missions are pretty good for what they are, and for that matter what every Battlefield campaign is. A very good looking shooting gallery with a good variety in gameplay. Throughout the missions you can find hidden weapons which you can then use in other missions. You'll find collectibles in the form of dog tags which you can then use in the multiplayer. And you can order your squad to attack nearby enemies, which is completely unnecessary on lower difficulties and makes you breeze through the game on the hard difficulty. Long story short, this campaign is fine. But now for the multiplayer, and if you've seen my previous Battlefield videos, you know that there are 3 things that I mostly take into consideration when talking about a Battlefield game. All-out warfare, team play, and fun. So as always, let's just start with the all-out warfare aspect of the game. Thank God I already made a video on Battlefield 3, because so much in this game just stays the same. But is that a bad thing? Well, I don't think it is. I mean, if there's one thing that Battlefield 2042 is proving right now, it's that changing things is not always better. In Battlefield 4, classes are the same as in Battlefield 3. So are a lot of the guns and gadgets, the main game modes the game ships with, most of the vehicles you can use, you get the idea. But when playing it, it definitely isn't the same. The engine upgrade this game got, going from the already incredibly impressive Frostbite 2 engine to the absolute powerhouse that is the Frostbite 3 engine, made this game perform like that one kid on the playground that seemed to have forgotten his chill pills and therefore has been doing that helicopter fight move for the past 3 hours. What I'm trying to say is it's powerful and honestly quite impressive. The graphics are even more impressive than the previous entry. Those weird blue and grey color filters I talked about in the Battlefield 3 video were gone, which made the game look more vibrant. Suppression was still in the game, but at least it didn't change the game into a Peter Parker simulator. Most maps were a lot bigger, and for the at that point next generation of consoles, it meant that they could finally play with 64 players per match as well. It also meant that destruction was a lot more dynamic in a lot of places. But arguably the most impressive part of this game was its newest feature. Since Battlefield promoted itself a lot around its destruction mechanics and the internet was becoming more and more edgy, DICE must have decided that this was a good moment to combine both their ability to create full-scale destruction and the player base's kind of disturbing urge to cause it. The result? Levolution. Huge scripted destruction sequences that could be triggered by the players themselves and would change the layout of the map. Every gamer who was around back then probably still knows the collapsing skyscraper from Siege of Shanghai, since back in 2013 the promotional material was force-fed through your computer screen like you were Nikocado Avocado forcing some spaghetti down his throat. But pretty much every vanilla map had these destructible structures. In Hanen Resort, both sides of the hotel could collapse. In Rogue Transmission, the huge satellite dish could be destroyed. In Flood Zone, the zone could literally be flooded. What the actual use of Levolution was, I think it's still up for debate. On the one hand, I always saw this as a very cool and awesome looking mechanic that could change the dynamic of a match halfway through. On the other hand, it was just, oh my god, explosions! So in short, the game looks amazing, destruction got turned up to 11, even the base game had a lot of variety in weapons and gadgets, maps were huge and varied. Now add the fact that weather effects were present in the game, most notably in my favorite map Parasil Storm. Naval combat had a much bigger presence, which was also enhanced by storms that created huge waves, and on paper this is pretty much the most all-out warfare Battlefield there is. But we're not even done yet, because that's just the base game. Throughout the first years of the game releasing, DLC was added, once again in the form of Battlefield Premium. Now you'd think that paying $60 for a game would already be enough, but keep in mind that it's EA we're talking about here. The scummy bullshit company that let their reputation go down the crapper right around this time, and deliberately split up the player base by using this system in order to make more money. Always remember, kids, companies do not care about you. Sure, I think it sucks that you had to pay so much money for additional content, but at least it came with a sort of feeling of security that because you paid extra money, you got some thick and girthy DLC. And that is definitely the truth. If you bought the premium edition of the game, you got 5 DLC packs, each with their own theme, similar to what Battlefield 3 did. China Rising focused on huge open maps on the Chinese mainland. Second Assault remade 4 of the most popular maps of Battlefield 3 and made them more next-gen-ish. Naval Strike focused mostly on naval combat. Dragon's Teeth focused on close-quarter infantry maps. And Final Stand not only showed us the potential future of the Battlefield franchise, but was also a callback to Battlefield 2142. Every single DLC pack added 4 new maps, new weapons and gadgets, new vehicles, new mechanics. It was pretty much like a little Christmas celebration every time a DLC came out. Adding all of this made the game feel even more huge in scale, and that wasn't even the end. Since after that we got the Weapons Grade DLC, Night Operations, Community Operations and Legacy Operations. So after 2 years this game was more packed than a scooter in downtown India. What I personally found the most interesting about the DLC packs was that it did something not a lot of people paid attention to, and that is environmental storytelling. Not only did they just bring out new maps for this game, they made sure that every map sort of progressed the story of Battlefield 4. China Rising depicted the invasion of the Chinese mainland by the US Army right after the campaign for Battlefield 4 ended. Second Assault literally showed the second assault of these Battlefield 3 maps, not just remastering them, but adding burned out vehicles from the battle, giving it a more post-battle feeling. Final Stand did this incredibly well by not only giving us a lot of prototype weapons to play with, like the hover tank and the railgun, but also by showing us prototypes of vehicles we've seen in the past. The huge Titans from Battlefield 2142 being constructed in Hangar 21, the mech suits known as Battle Walkers being built in Giants of Corellia, and so on. For the people that actually take their time to look around, there is more than enough to see, but more on that later. For now I can just say that all-out warfare is definitely present in Battlefield 4. Team play is yet again an important part of the game, and it has its similarities, slight differences and slight improvements over Battlefield 3. In theory, this game makes team play very easy. You can now have 5 people in a squad, you have several hotkeys to interact with your teammates, every class still has its distinct role in a team, and the reintroduction of Battlefield 2's Commander mode really makes team play more rewarding than ever. Playing as the commander is actually sort of a minigame within the game. You pretty much lead your team through the battle by giving them orders. In return, you can build up team points you can then use to give your team bonuses and assets, or you can call in Tomahawk missiles so you can kill enemies yourself. In theory, there are more than enough tools to initiate team play, since you actually get rewarded for playing together and following orders. In practice, however, it can boil down to everyone screaming at each other to play the goddamn objective, like a parent yelling at a 5-year-old to eat their veggies. But let's be honest, what would online gaming be without toxicity? It's cool, however, that a game of this scale included the commander mode. Being able to help your team by giving them orders and rewards was actually kind of nice, let alone that you could even kill people yourself if your team worked together good enough. It used to be available for tablets and phones as well, but don't bother looking it up nowadays. Whether or not team play in this game actually rewards you with a victory still depends on every individual player doing what they're supposed to do. But that's kind of the whole point. The only thing a game can do to make sure this happens is encourage team play. And fortunately, Battlefield 4 keeps up with the trend of trying to reward you as much as possible for working together as a team. So yeah, team play can definitely be checked off as well. So now we reach the final point of what makes Battlefield Battlefield. Is it any fun? Well, that's sort of a complicated story at first. Because as much as I've been positive about this game, pretty much everyone knows that's not what this game was known for in the beginning. Just picture yourself buying a car and after 2 hours of driving, it explodes. When confronting the seller, he tells you, oh yeah, well yeah, that's kind of the whole thing with this car, it's not really done yet. But we do promise to fix it for you over the course of the next 2 years. That's what it feels like to buy and play AAA games nowadays, and Battlefield 4 is definitely no exception. Upon release, the game was plagued with error messages, crappy performance, and overall just a pretty underwhelming experience for a next-gen game. Mostly because the game's hit registration and netcode were so messed up, it became incredibly frustrating and almost more rewarding to just shoot everyone in real life, to play Battlefield 3 instead. Lower end hardware like the last generation of consoles already scaled down the game by having worse graphics, less players and less objectives, but lower end PCs that had to run the full game made the game run like a 1930s stop motion film and crashed every time a Levolution event occurred. That in combination with the fact that the really impressive Levolution events were all present in the marketing, but upon playing the full game you'll realize maps like Golmod Railway only had a train running around the map. The dam exploding in Lankang Dam is impressive, but it doesn't really do anything except for scattering around some debris. Operation Locker sounds like a fun new close quarter infantry map on paper, but in reality it's a small damp sauna exclusively filled with fat old men. The amount of sweat in this game made Operation Metro feel like a casual Sunday morning stroll. So no, the game was not in a good place, and for a long time it looked like the game was doomed. But developer DICE did pretty much everything in their power to fix the game. The poor state it was in was eventually more grounded in EA trying to push an unfinished game, rather than DICE actually wanting to release a half-assed attempt to a first-person shooter. Gradually the player base started dwindling, but behind the scenes DICE worked like a Chinese sweatshop in order to fix all of its problems. It resulted in patch after patch, update after update, but nothing seemed to actually work. In fact, there were points where the game actually became worse. That's when DICE decided to make one of the most brilliant or ridiculous choices ever, depending on who you ask. They started an initiative called the CTE, or Community Test Environment. A separate server in which players could get early access to new content and help DICE with making choices on whether or not to implement certain things into the game. Basically saying, hey, if you don't like the game, fix it yourself. Some people hated the fact that this €60 AAA game now went back into an early access beta test around a year after its release, but gradually it actually started to improve the game and the community really felt like they were being taken seriously. It took almost 2 years for DICE to release all the DLC, implement all the patches, updates and everything learned from the C2E to finally say, God damn it people, it's done! But was it too late? Had the player base moved on? Had everything been for nothing? Hell no. Sure, it took some time to pick up steam, but with the gradual decline of interest in newer Call of Duty titles and the lack of interest in the latest Battlefield release, people started to return to Battlefield 4. What they found was an almost unrecognizable game. Pretty much everything worked as intended. All the added content over the last 2 years made it one thick dump truck of a game. The CTE made sure that this community felt like they were being heard and therefore became incredibly solid. Player numbers started going up, all the way up until the point where it started competing with, or even overshadowing newer releases in the franchise. Within the community, several different sub-communities started to form. Not only people just playing the game, also people who did insane tricks and over the top only in Battlefield moments, and of course an aspect that became very important for Battlefield from this point on, Easter egg hunting. Who can forget the search for the Megalodon? The first time we've heard the scream of the T-Rex on Rogue Transmission or the Yeti on Golmod Railway. It was insane, and DICE definitely went all out with the Easter eggs, all resulting in the god-awfully frustrating yet incredibly immersing and rewarding search that was the Phantom program. Weeks, nay, months went into hundreds of players searching every corner of every map for the slightest hint toward the end goal. A search which contained Morse code, audio files, puzzles, weird online pictures and links and dog tags and you name it. It was insane and a hell of a lot of fun. And that was just the Easter egg hunting. The game itself became substantially more fun to play with all the added content there was. From shooting people with an old cannon on Operation Mortar, to insane pinpoint accurate across the map shots with a railgun.
Now control objective Alpha. Attention. I have eyes on an enemy sniper just east of your location.
If Bad Company 2 was a sandbox and Battlefield 3 made that sandbox bigger, then Battlefield 4 is a complete desert filled with opportunities. And no, of course the game isn't perfect. DMRs are incredibly overpowered, which makes it possible to kill people on short ranges but also across the map. Some maps are so big that you won't have any cover as infantry, so you'll be ass blasted by any person who decided to choose chaos today and only go for the vehicles. And things like spawn trapping and base raping are still here. The only thing I can find enjoyment in at those points is just picking up an LMG and pressing left mouse button until the screen says killed an enemy. Frustration will always be a part of online multiplayers, but in this game the pros far outweigh the cons. Battlefield 4 is the game that I put the most time into of any game I've ever played. Because I was there when it released, when it went through its worst times, and when it eventually had its resurrection, it will always be one of my favorite games, even above Bad Company 2. But where I was hesitant to encourage you guys to play Bad Company 2 or Battlefield 3 because of their age, rougher edges or dwindling player bases, I can wholeheartedly say, play Battlefield 4 right now. Especially because I'm having a lot of trouble with Battlefield 2042 right now, I was pretty excited to go back to this game. But I didn't realize how lively this community still is. How good the gameplay still is, how well the graphics still look, etc. Even though the campaign is not going to win any storytelling prizes, it does some things to make it enjoyable, or at least not a waste of time. Though it is far from something we've seen in like a Call of Duty campaign, where it actually still feels like some time went into writing it. Even the fact that it doesn't have something like a co-op mode can completely be forgiven as soon as you start up the multiplayer. This is at this point without a doubt the most complete Battlefield game there is. The sheer amount of size, the endless possibilities, the focus on team play, the ridiculous Easter eggs, all these things have been done just as good in some newer installments, but never better in my opinion. Sure, graphics wise it's not as impressive anymore with games like Battlefield 1 existing, and Battlefield 2042 with its huge maps and 128 players definitely feels even bigger, but at this point there is just no match between these games and Battlefield 4 when you talk about how much you can do. If you decide to buy and play it right now, you'll be greeted with everything the game should have been from the start and so much more. But the big upside is of course that it all works right now and you can get it for a fraction of the price it cost back then. Battlefield 4 is a powerhouse that still doesn't show any sign of stopping, and you should play it sooner rather than later. Thanks for watching. As always, let me know in the comment section if you liked the video and if you have just as many good memories of Battlefield 4 as I do. I also like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who subscribed to my channel so far. Right now I'm getting closer and closer to 300 subscribers, and that's already a lot more than I ever expected to get. So thanks a lot for all the support. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that because I really like making these videos and seeing people's responses to it. In the upcoming weeks I'll be working on more Battlefield related content, as well as finally continuing working on part 2 of my history in video game series. I really hope to see you in those videos, but for now, bye!